It was the night of 2nd February 1942, and the snow on the village of Geldrop had been falling for weeks. By midnight, the air would carry the sound of one knife, one scream, and the end of a Dutch family. A girl in love with a German sergeant, a drunk brother with a bread knife, a sister who picked up a phone and turned in her own family to the men in gray uniforms. Stay with this one, because this isn't a story about war. It's a story about how a war makes a family pick a side, and what happens when a daughter picks the wrong one. The Derks family lived in Tehout, a corner of Geldrop with potato fields and a single church bell. 16 children, 8 boys and 8 girls. They were not wealthy. The sons sold potatoes door to door to keep the family fed. The girls helped their mother with the cooking, the washing, the long winter chores that filled the Dutch household before electricity reached every room. When the Germans rolled into the Netherlands in May 1940, the Derks brothers hated them on sight. They were Brabant men. They knew what occupation meant. They watched the trucks come through their village, and they kept their heads down. But one of the sisters did not. Her name was Riek. She was 18. By the winter of 1942, she was in love. The man was a German sergeant, a Feldwebel, stationed somewhere in the Eindhoven area. He was married. He had 2 children back in Germany. None of that mattered to Riek. He had a uniform, a wage from the occupier, and he made promises. She slipped out of her parents' house in the evenings to meet him. In a village of 3,000 people, you cannot hide a love affair forever, especially not when the lover is wearing the color of the men everyone hates. Her brothers found out. Henk was 35, the oldest of the 4 boys still at home. Gerard was 24. Christ was 22. Theo was somewhere in between. They argued with her. They threatened her. They told her what would happen if the neighbors started talking. She did not stop. 2nd February 1942. The cold that winter was the kind Dutch farmers still talk about. The snow on the roads was knee-deep, and the wind off the lowlands cut straight through wool. Gerard came home drunk. He had been at the pub. His mother was still up, sitting near the stove, waiting for the rest of her children to come in for the night. She told Gerard to wait too. He didn't. He went into the kitchen. He took the bread knife off the counter. He told his mother that Riek was out there somewhere with the Germans. He pulled his coat on. He opened the door, and the cold wind blew the snow into the kitchen. Then he was gone. His mother stayed in her chair. She knew where he had gone. Christ, watching from across the room, said nothing. The Eisenman gravel pits sat in the woods just outside the village. Old quarries, frozen over for the season, surrounded by birch trees. Riek and her Feldwebel were there with a small group of other German soldiers, drinking, laughing in the cold. Gerard arrived through the snow. What happened next was over in less than a minute. Gerard buried the bread knife in the German sergeant somewhere in the dark, and the sergeant dropped. The other soldiers ran. They left footprints in the snow leading away from the pools of blood. Later, the German report would call their flight an act of cowardice. Gerard walked home. The Germans surrounded the Derks house that same night. They didn't have to guess where to go. Riek had picked up a phone and told them which family to come for. The father, the mother, Henk, Gerard, Theo, Christ, and one of the sisters were all in the house. The Germans took everyone except the mother to the police station in Geldrop. The questioning lasted hours. The father was released. The sister was released. Gerard confessed. He pleaded guilty to the murder alone. The German police did not believe him. 1 bread knife, 1 drunk Dutchman, 1 dead Feldwebel. They wanted more than 1 neck for it. The 4 brothers were moved to the German airbase at Velschap, just outside Eindhoven. Henk, Gerard, Theo, Christ. The verdict came back fast. Death by firing squad. All 4. The brothers had a few minutes together in the cells before they were transferred to the prison in Amsterdam. Henk was the oldest. He looked at his younger brothers. Theo had a wife. Christ was 22. Henk made the kind of decision that does not have a name. He said that if he also confessed, if 2 of them admitted to it instead of 1, There was a chance the Germans would believe they had their men and let the youngest two live. He was right. The brothers were taken to Amsterdam. The execution notice was nailed to the cell door. Every time a guard came down the corridor with the key, Christ thought his time had arrived. Every time the door opened for someone else, he kept breathing. On 10 February 1942, Christ and Theo were told their death sentences had been reduced. 10 years in prison. They were going to live. 2 days earlier, on 8 February, Gerard and Hank had been executed by firing squad. Hank's plan had worked exactly as he had designed it. Christ and Theo were sent to Siegburg prison in Germany, then to Camp Eberstadt, then to Ebrach, then, in the final months of the war, to Camp Bernau, just outside Berlin. By that point, they were too weak to do the labor the guards demanded. Riek, the sister, was moved to a children's home outside Geldrop for her own safety. The neighbors in Tithout would have killed her if she had stayed. She wrote to her brothers twice in the camps to ask for their forgiveness. They never wrote back. In the spring of 1945, the Americans and the French broke open the wire at Bernau. Christ Derks walked out of the camp weighing 37 kilograms, about 80 pounds. He was 25 years old. The journey home to Geldrop took a month. The Derks family had no idea the brothers were still alive. When Christ and Theo walked back into the village in the summer of 1945, their mother held them like ghosts. It took both brothers nearly a year to recover their strength. Their father was older now, their mother quieter. The village had moved on the way villages do. The question of Riek had not moved on. She was still in the children's home outside the village. For her to return, every member of the family had to sign the paperwork. Christ was the last to agree. He refused at first, telling his mother he would never sign anything that brought Riek back into the house where Hank and Gerard had once eaten breakfast. He signed in the end, for his mother. But when Riek returned to Tithout, Christ was gone, walking, unable to face his sister. He lived to 95, dying in 2015. He rarely spoke of Hank and Gerard and never fully forgave the sister he believed had betrayed them. The war wasn't the worst thing that ever happened to him. That's all for this one. If the Derks brothers stayed with you, hit subscribe. War Stories After Dark uncovers the family's history books left behind. Share a wartime story your family carries and pass this on to someone who needs to understand what a Dutch winter felt like in 1942.